Today, we're going to focus on visualizing our data and doing some basic analysis on it. Now, we know with COVID data set, there's a lot of different analysis that we could do. We're going to focus right now on just analyzing for the U.S. as a whole and for a given state, and to see what sorts of things we might want to do. So what I'm going to do to start with, I'm going to do a U.S. by state. So I'm going to take the U.S. data set and group it by the state and by the region and by the date. And then I'm going to summarize, which means for each state, I'm going to take the cases to be the sum of the cases for that state, because each state had multiple counties in it, you'll recall. So if I did the maximum, that wouldn't work. So I'm going to sum for the cases, and then same for the deaths, and the population is going to be the sum of the population of the counties. Then I will mutate, which means I'm going to add a column where I'm going to compute the deaths per million, and I'm going to compute that as the deaths divided by the population. And then I will select those features that I want to look at. And so now what I have is for each state and each date in that state, I have the number of cases, the number of deaths. I'll also have the deaths per million and the population. So I would want to look at what the population is and to see that it, in fact, came out to be what, and just double check it with a population that you see, that you can find online to be sure it's approximately correct. Okay. So now I'm going to look at the total for the U.S. So in order to do that, I'm going to look at this U.S. by state, and now I want to group it by the country region, right? So I'm going to group it by the U.S. and by the date. So for each date, I want the number of cases, the number of deaths, and the sum of the population. And same sort of thing. I'm going to look at what I get for the U.S. totals. So now I have the population for the U.S. And since this is all starting with zeros in terms of deaths, but it starts when the cases started, let's look at the end of this just to be sure what we're getting here. So now we're seeing the cases much higher, the deaths much higher, and the deaths per million being around 1,546 for the U.S. Okay. So let's see. So let's visualize some of this data. Okay. So in order to visualize this, I am going to take out of this U.S. totals, I am going to just take the cases where there were some cases, right? So I'm going to filter where there were some cases, and I'm going to make X be my date and Y be the number of cases. And I'll add a line and points to the graph. And then I'm going to do the same sort of thing, but I'm going to also add deaths to the same graph. Now, so that this doesn't look, so you don't lose all the details in it, I'm going to scale the Y variable on a log scale. And let me make this a little bigger here so we can actually see what we have. So this is the number of cases in whatever this color is, orange sort of color, and deaths in a turquoise. Okay, so this gives us a visualization of the total number of cases and deaths in the United States from the start of the reporting of the COVID. Now I can do the same sort of thing and choose a state that I would like to look at. So I'll just choose the state of New York, and I will filter and take only that state. So where the province state is equal to the state of New York. And then I will do the same sort of plot here. and I can see the COVID-19 in New York cases. So I can see what that growth has looked like over time. Okay. Now, these visualizations lead us to some questions, right? And right now, let's see, what is the total maximum deaths? What date have we looking at, right? Let's first look at what date do we have. So your date's going to be different than the one I'm doing when I'm recording it, because the day I'm recording it is going to be different, right? So you should look at what your date is, and then look at what is the max number of deaths that we've got so far, right? So this would tell me the maximum number of deaths, which should be the deaths as of that date that you've got. But on our graph, it looks like the COVID cases have leveled off. Is that true? Well, see, that this visualization leads us to questions that then is going to take us back to do more of our transforming of our data, and then visualizing that and then analyzing that. So we're going to take a look at that again in the next video.